Good morning. It's Rochester Today, Friday morning already. I'm Andy Brownell. I'm News Talk 1340 KROC AM 96.9 FM, along with Mike Dougherty, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, better known in this neck of the woods as MnDOT Mike. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Happy December.
Yeah, I know. Gosh. I'm at that point where I'm missing summer and not accustomed to winter yet.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll shift over to the stage of, come on, where's spring? Well, I guess when we're talking about transportation issues, we better talk about our first. It wasn't even a significant snow.
No.
But it was enough snow to make things very, very slick for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And probably bad timing. A lot of the slipperiness occurred during the evening commute, as you want to call it. And apparently we're need that adjustment period for winter driving because things got nasty out on the roads.
Yeah, and I think, I was looking back at some things and in talking to another group about it, and there's not a one-size-fits-all winter event or so
right.
Each one's different, and I think that one, as it kind of swept in, had more moisture. It was misting, and then the temperatures dropped quick, and you got that ice, and then we see snow. But but you're right. I think this is that part of that whole fall transition into winter of the road conditions change because it's winter, and so we need to ratchet back. At home we were all talking, before the next day of like, you're going to have to leave earlier because it's going to take longer to get there, and go slower and be careful at the curves and the intersections. And, I think, lots of people do practice that, but, we are just in a very hurry, go world. And we don't necessarily give ourselves that gift of time to get there. And so then, Mother Nature says, hey, right. Your tires aren't going to have that same traction as dry pavement. And we can be out there with, salt or brine or whatever, and it's going to help, but it's still, there's a layer on that road that's not dry pavement, that doesn't have that good friction. So I think that's the big thing is, reminding ourselves again of just pay attention to the weather reports. If there's a chance, and now, as you drive along after, even after we had this one this week, there's still some residual snow on certain roads or icy spots. And as our temperatures stay down or, it fluctuates, and that fluctuation is almost the more challenging part. It gets above, you get a little bit of melting, and then bang, it goes back down below freezing and it freezes up. And that may catch people off guard as well.
And you get that black ice, so you don't even have any idea it's there in those circumstances.
Yeah. And so that's some of those things like, you and I have talked over the years, those key areas, there could be like under a bridge, there's the potential that black ice on a bridge deck. Bridge decks, are anywhere from 2 to 5 degrees colder than the overall temperature because there's no insulation under that bridge. Different places like that, or places where, like at a stoplight or a traffic ramp where vehicles have had to stop and that condensation comes out of the exhaust and it can, freeze on the road. Little things like that that'll catch you off guard if you're not really being vigilant.
There's no magic pill for MnDOT really or any other agency.
No.
Because whatever you do is temporary in nature.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people like to say pre-treat. Oh, why weren't you pre-treating? Well, there are times where pre-treating with some brine is very helpful, but there are a number of other times where it could really compound the problem. And so, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Our folks are always watching the weather. They're aware of it. They're, discussing what's the best approach. And yet they know it's not a one-size-fits-all. It might work well on Highway 52 coming through Rochester, but if you're out on Highway 42 heading to Plainview, that might be a whole different thing with the winds and whatever else. So, you really have to be alert for your surroundings.
And I know we've kind of touched on this in the past, but especially for less experienced drivers or people who are moving to this part of the world who are not accustomed to driving in these types of conditions. And face it, there are a lot of folks who, especially in the Rochester area, are coming in from the east and west coast or down south, and they've never, or rarely have had to deal with this sort of thing. But on top of that, they call it the double-edged sword of this modern transportation technology, our vehicles. They are so much better than when we were first starting out as drivers. The tires are so much better. The brakes are so much better. The traction control is so much better. You have so many vehicles with all-wheel drive. But I think in many, many conditions, those technologies have improved safety immensely for motorists, especially airbags and all of the other sorts. But they also, I think, give people a false sense of security.
Yes.
Because the basic law of physics still apply.
They do.
This vehicle weighs this much. You have a footprint on the road of each tire that's possibly 8 inches. And when you hit the brakes on slippery conditions, it doesn't matter what kind of tires you have. Well, it does a little bit, the tires, but and your anti-traction stuff can help a little bit, but your four-wheel drive's not going to help at all.
Yep.
You're still going in the ditch, or you're going to slam into the person in front of you.
Yep. And that's the thing. If you listen to State Patrol or anybody talk about, the key factor in crashes, it's speed. Whether it's winter, summer, that because that's, obviously you just explained in the winter, obviously that's the higher your speed, the, tougher it is going to be to get that traction to stop. The same, with control, everything, so manage that speed or go slower, which then means you need to plan for a little longer trip time. All those things that just kind of play in, but I would, say you get there safely. You're not in the ditch. That seems like good incentive to me to slow down.
But yeah, you're right. When you point out the fact, if you're speeding to get where you need to be in those kind of conditions because you don't want to be late, well, you're going to be really late.
Exactly. Yeah.
If somebody has to pull you out of the ditch, or in worse circumstances, you have a completely smashed up vehicle, or somebody else, got hurt. Unfortunately, there were some horrible tragedies that occurred during that slippery period of time on our roadways. And that alone, hopefully, would be a reminder to people: take it easy out there.
Yeah. And it's like you say, it's slow down, be alert. Get your headlights on. Obviously, you need to have your seatbelt on. That's a law, but that gives you greater control as well. It keeps you, in there behind the wheel. If you are starting to swerve around, some things like that. So, they're just some of those real basic things that we just kind of need to refresh in our minds. And it all starts, just getting that game plan before you head out the door.
Yeah. What's the term? Mindfulness. Think of that before you get behind the wheel, the consequences of not, being wary of what Mother Nature can do to you on those roadways.
Yeah. It's true.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We've got lots to talk about today with MnDOT Mike. He's Mike Dougherty with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. This is Rochester Today on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96. Welcome back, Rochester Today with Mike Dougherty, Minnesota Department of Transportation. I'm Andy Brownell, and you are listening to News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We talked a lot about winter driving safety and the key component slowing down, but I know we've talked about this before, but this is probably the best time to emphasize it. The state of Minnesota through MnDOT has this unbelievably wonderful tool. I marvel at it, and I can't fathom that people don't use it more often.
Yeah.
And that's the MN511. Initially it was a very useful tool with the maps and the road conditions, but MnDOT, you guys have added so much to this thing.
Yeah, it's you're right. I've kind of watched the evolution of it as well, and it's that great. We always say it's great information to know before you go, because you can, chart things out and just say, it's colored. It's not perfect, because like we were just saying earlier, the roads, there can be different conditions along one stretch of road. And sometimes that may not always be reflected in the coloring of the map, whether it's good driving, normal driving conditions or partially covered but it gives you a sense of what's going on that road. You've got a lot of traffic cameras now, especially up 52, up 35. We've got more out on Highway 14 between, Rochester and Owatonna now. So, that kind of can give you another perspective. It marks when there's a crash, and I'll see that periodically here in Rochester, coming down the hill southbound into Rochester. Inevitably, somebody's going a little too fast. Somebody brakes. There's a fender bender in the morning that can really gum up that morning commute. Yeah. If you see that, sort of pink exclamation point, that's a crash. And that, if you know that before you're going, you might say, you know what, I'm going to get off at 41st Street and, make a move and jog my way around rather than get stuck trying to get down 52 to 2nd Street or whatever. And then, the snowplows, they've got the cameras now too. And I really like that one of the recent snow events, I opened it up in the morning and there were just all these blue snowplow symbols all over the road. And I was like, yes, we are out there. We are out there in force.
Well, that's also an indication that things aren't that great if you have that many snowplows on the road.
Exactly. That's exactly, and that, use those indicators like that, wow, MnDOT's decided that conditions are such that they need this full complement of snowplows. And there was a guy here at work. He had to go up to the cities one evening. I think it was a couple weeks ago when we had that snow and ice roll in, like on a Wednesday night or something, Tuesday night, whenever that was. And he said he knew it was going to be bad because he looked on the 511 and there were all these crashes in certain clusters. Right. And he's like, well, I'm going to be leaving now rather than half an hour from now because it's going to take me longer. If all these people are crashing, there's something going on. So you can interpret that data and make it suit what's best for you.
And that's a good point. Don't check it 3 minutes before you leave.
Right.
Check it an hour before you're going to leave, especially if you know there's a possibility of inclement weather.
Yeah. And it's really great, if you've got like a passenger, because that's, if you're starting to see a slowdown of traffic, you can say, hey, check on 511, see what we've got up ahead. You've talked about that, in your trips to Duluth and stuff, just having an awareness, because sometimes you're stuck and you have no idea why are we stopped the way we're stopped. And at least you can look at a traffic camera or you can see that there's a crash symbol and you're like, oh, okay, say a prayer and hope that the crash is uneventful for everybody. And,
exactly.
But it's great information. And I think, each state has their own. They're not always the same, but it's good information whether you're going to Wisconsin, South Dakota, Iowa, North Dakota. It's at least there's something out there that can give you an indication beyond what you see out your windshield.
The best one, I have an example of unusual activity that was on 511 was heading up to Duluth. It was by Pine City and traffic came to just a standstill. So I'm in the co-pilot seat and I get the app out and I'm looking. Okay, I see what's going on. There's some sort of accident up here about 3 miles up. It was an airplane that had landed on the highway.
Oh, yeah. I remember you talking about this. Yes. That was crazy. Yeah, every so often that seems to happen. Wow.
That was a first for me. I've never encountered that driving anywhere, an actual airplane making an emergency landing on the freeway, but it did happen. The other aspect of this that I was thinking about is going back to when you and I were much younger, and many of our listeners were much younger. And, we didn't have the internet. All we had was, the map stuck in the glove box. There was no weather radar. You had a forecast. Otherwise, it was your own observation looking out the window and hoping for the best as you set out.
Right. Yeah. So you needed, I always say we should have them now too, but, back then especially, you needed that winter survival kit in the back of your vehicle.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really know. And if you went in the ditch, there wasn't a cell phone to call. You hope that maybe a trucker or somebody would radio, and get you some help. And, but you didn't know how long you'd be stuck in the ditch. So yeah, there's a lot of conveniences to technology, but, they also come with some downsides too. But overall, I think, this is good information, and MnDOT's always looking to enhance, how it's reported, what's reported. And we're hoping that people take that information then and use it in good ways and, before they go, not after the fact.
Don't create a distraction for yourself by trying to check it out while you're the one doing the driving.
Yeah, it's not good, and it's illegal.
It's illegal.
So, yeah.
You mentioned the emergency kit, which seems to be something that's overlooked often nowadays. And a lot of it is because of the cell phones. Everybody thinks, okay, if I get into trouble, I can always whip out the cell phone and help is on the way. And that is a pretty strong assumption, especially if things get really nasty out there.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of vehicles in the ditches, and you have serious crashes. It could still be hours before somebody can reach you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, it could be really, really cold where you're at, and you could have passengers with you who may be kids, or maybe somebody in the vehicle with you has some sort of fragile medical condition.
Yep.
And then what?
Yeah, no, it's, and I've always said now, like the traditional, winter survival kit with the blanket and, some food and a candle and a coffee can, and, a flashlight, some things like that. But part of that, although it doesn't go in your kit, is to have that cell phone fully charged too. Because you don't know, it's a nice tool, but, if you're running out the door with 10% and figure, then that's your connection to with the dispatch folks to let them know I'm okay, or I need assistance, or here's where I am. And like you said, if it's a busy day like that, I've been over in the State Patrol dispatch sometimes when the weather's starting to change, and they know it because they're just starting to see folks, and they're trying to, manage all the resources and keep people safe. And there's just only so many tow trucks, so many troopers, so many snowplow, there's, pretty soon you do need to sort of take a number and wait your turn. And, that can be challenging. Like you said, if we're down in these, sub-zero or single digit freezing time, or lots of blowing snow. And, the one other big thing is if you do go in the ditch, I heard a trooper talking about this recently again, stay in your vehicle with your seatbelt on. That's your safest place. Getting out, we've all seen videos now of, these vehicles that come spinning out of control, and somebody's standing by the roadside, or a trooper, somebody's trying to help, and they're diving out of the way. That's just a recipe for disaster. So stay strapped in, you're safe there. That vehicle gives you a good safety shell that, like we said, that seatbelt will keep you secure, and just wait until somebody's there and tells you to come on out, and they can help take care of you then. Because if you slid in the ditch, what's to say the conditions up there are not ripe for somebody else to follow that same path in, and you're sitting there.
And beyond that, human nature is you see somebody standing by the road waving their arms, what are you going to do? You're going to hit the brakes.
Yep.
Which is going to cause you to lose control, likely.
Yep.
All right. A lot of food for thought. We do need to take a break for news already. We're with Mike Dougherty, MnDOT Mike, on Rochester Today, on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. Back in just a few.
News app.
Good morning and welcome back. Friday morning on Rochester Today with Mike Dougherty, MnDOT Mike from the Minnesota Department of Transportation. I'm Andy Brownell, and of course, this is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. Okay. A lot of the times you and I get together, it's road construction is the hot topic.
Yes.
Of course, logically. And we're in that period of time where I imagine everything's wrapped up, right? Everything's buttoned up for the winter?
Pretty much. There's a couple that are those 3-year projects that are kind of going on. And yeah, everything else, is open and back. We left a couple projects where we're going to do the final layer of pavement next year.
Okay.
Just because it was getting close, and it's good practice if you're getting close where the temperatures are a little more challenging, just to let it sit and settle over the winter, and then you'll get, then you're not going to get that settlement that's, may occur if you did put that last layer down. So,
these are mainly inside a town or something like that, right?
Yeah. So there's one that's over by Red Wing at the CP Rail, bridge. So there's just one more layer to go there, but everything else is open. And then down in Leroy on Highway 56, same sort of thing. And especially there where they did a reconstruction. So they were digging way down, into the ground for all the water utilities, sewer utilities. And you're bound to get some settlement, some more compaction potentially. And so over the winter, that'll help settle. Winter will finally leave and spring will come. We'll get that thaw, and then they'll come in probably in May, I think, and just put that last. It's only like about an inch and a half, 1.5 inches or so of final paving on there, and then put the final striping on. So it comes out better. But everything else, we've got these 3-year projects that are kind of continuing down on I-90 and Highway 52 southeast of Rochester. It's open now. You'll come through and you'll see, there's still some work. They're working on a bridge abutment. They were doing some of that work with concrete now, and they'll do a little more here. But when things get really cold, they'll probably just shut down for the season. But the big thing for folks there is next year, probably mid-April, Highway 52 south of, basically at Marion, will close. So you won't be able to drive through 52 to go south there. You'll have to be taking a detour to go east on I-90 to County Road 7 and then down to Chatfield that way. But that's a big thing because that'll be in place, that detour, for almost the whole year down there. So, like I said, that's why I kind of said,
now.
Yeah, this year was sort of a little test run, give you a little taste of some of those detours, some of the work, but it'll be, heavy duty construction. They'll be replacing one of the bridges, I-90 bridges, and then building that flyover ramp as well. So that's why it'll be pretty restricted down there. You won't be able to get through, but you'll be able to get onto I-90 from 52.
So I-90 will be shifting over to one lane in each direction during the bridge project?
I'll have single lane in each direction, adjacent to each other, kind of just as you come down the hills on both sides.
Yep.
So that'll be on I-90, but you'll still be able to use the ramps to get to 52, to go north, or if you're coming south to get onto I-90 east or west. So you'll still have those options there. And, in some ways that'll probably be better for folks because you're not going to get that, northbound traffic with the southbound on 52.
Oh,
because
sure.
there won't, there just won't be any, in that single lane. So, safety wise for folks that were concerned, that'll be helpful, but it'll also be just a bit of an inconvenience because you do need to, go east and then south. I think somebody calculated it's just a matter of a few extra miles, but because it seems like, if you're going down 52, you're kind of, heading east, but you're also going south. Whereas, but yeah.
I just love MnDOT jargon. A bit of an inconvenience.
Yes.
To everybody else, a pain in the neck.
Yes. Yes. Again, plan ahead.
But it's one of those, it's going to be nice when it's all done.
It is. Yeah, it'll be really great. So I think that's one of the big ones there. And then over in Austin, we're continuing the work. We demoed the 4th Street Bridge. What was it? Just before.
Right. So that's closed for the whole winter.
Yeah. And so if you're going eastbound, you can't use the ramps there. You need to go down to 14th Street.
Yep.
And get off there. And there's been some congestion, so people are kind of adjusting. Hopefully by the end of this month, we'll have the Cedar River Bridge, the eastbound Cedar River Bridge, back open. They just rebuilt that one. And then that'll allow us to then open up the eastbound lanes, and you can use the eastbound ramps at 4th Street. So that's where you'd go. You get off, like if you're heading towards Rochester, you could get off. You could go towards
downtown.
go downtown, go towards the high school. So that'll help with some of the, mobility for folks there. But it's good just to remember if you're heading to Austin, right now there's single lane traffic both ways, and some congestion at some of the detours, but some of that'll open back up. But then, as soon as we hit summer again.
There's still crews out there on that Cedar River Bridge working now.
Yes.
Oh, I don't envy them.
Yeah, they poured the bridge deck about a little over a week ago. And so a lot of this stuff, it's the concrete, so they need to have heating, temperature control in place to maintain those temperatures that we need for proper curing for all that concrete. So it gets to be a little more cumbersome for them on the job. But that bridge is shaping up, and they'll get the railings and things in here soon. And so it'll be helpful. But it's we'll just be entering year 2 next year. So, 2 more years to go. And the same way, at I-90 and Highway 52. So it's, like you said, there'll be great improvements when they're done, but just the process of getting there is a challenge and certainly creates some inconvenience or some challenges for motorists or people hauling freight, just figuring out where they need to go and how they need to get there.
Any sneak peeks available for other things that we can expect next year? I know MnDOT doesn't make the big splash announcement until next year about what we're going to see in the spring.
Yeah, there are some things like, Highway 14 on the Beltline, we're going to it's a mill and overlay repaving.
Oh, okay.
So, but like you say, if you want to talk inconvenience, that will be for folks, because that sees a lot of traffic.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But it's mainly just a repaving. So, there won't be a lot of, big disruption, but certainly we'll be squeezing lanes down when we're removing pavement, doing any of that sort of work. But
is that going to be from 52 to Broadway or the other side?
52 to just before Broadway, like probably the car wash Hy-Vee area there.
Okay.
And then you skip over to 3rd Avenue and then go east to Marion Road.
Oh, the whole stretch. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that Broadway and Highway 14 intersection, that's a separate project. That'll be coming up in 2027. So, because we wanted to redo some of that and reconstruct some of that for some improvements. So we decided to pull that out of the main project and focus that separately with that.
Are we getting any closer to a final design that people will be able to look at on that?
It's getting there. I'm trying to think of where it's coming up. I would guess somewhere in the winter time here, we'll probably see something shaped up as well on that. And then it's just sort of getting ready and how it connects in. And
are we going to get rid of I guess for a better term, the ramps?
Yes, the kind of free right.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Because those have been there since the beginning of time.
Yeah,
well,
so they'll be kind of squared up. Yeah. They'll be squared up, I believe. And there'll be some areas where you may have like multiple turn lanes to allow for some of those turn movements that are heavy. But it should be better for everybody, the motorists, but also, the bicyclists, people walking, running through that area. We'll take those mounds out.
Thankfully, yeah.
Yeah. That was funny. At one of our meetings, that was like everyone was coming in and saying, you got to take those out. And we said, that's already part of the plan. They're going.
Trust us, they're gone.
Yeah. And then we're just like, oh, well, then I don't really have much else to say. I don't, so, we try to be, listen and try to figure out how to accomplish some of the things that people present. Do we have a budget to do that? Does it fall within the scope? But it's, there were some things that definitely need improvement. The city of Rochester helped identify some of that as well and is working in partnership with us. So I think it'll be an improvement. But again, when that arrives in 2027, that will be a major disruption there for folks because that sees about 50,000 vehicles a day come through there. So it's just heavy. We'll see with some of the commuter bus things if that helps any, but still there's just a lot of traffic regardless of how people are commuting or driving, getting wherever they need to go. There's a lot of people that pump through there.
And you think, those ramps that I think they were installed probably in the 1950s when Crossroads shopping center was being developed. I mean, that's how long. And they were advantageous. But the level of traffic has risen to the level now that I think they create sometimes more bottlenecks than they do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think some of it has to do with, people, kind of pushing, their speeds far beyond what's posted. So it's, it'll help break down those decisions again. I think, as I look at some of the things MnDOT proposes now in intersections and things, that really is, whether it's a J-turn, a roundabout, it helps you kind of focus decisions in more segmented ways rather than trying to look back and forth and, sweeping around where it's really hard to take it all in and react accordingly.
And that one is one of those intersections where, especially if you're attempting to use one of those ramps, you are whipping your head all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add the pedestrians and bicycles to the mix.
Yeah. It's a busy area there.
Okay. We need to take another break, and we will return and talk about an annual Minnesota tradition.
Yes,
in just a few minutes. MnDOT Mike's here. Mike Dougherty. I'm Andy Brownell, and this is Rochester Today, News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96. News Talk 1340 KROC AM 96.9 FM Friday morning with MnDOT Mike. Mike Dougherty with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And it must be close to Christmas because we're going to talk about naming snowplows.
Yes.
That quirky Minnesota tradition.
Yeah, it's turned out well. It's entering its fifth year now.
Have you guys ever figured out who was the brainchild of this thing, or was it? Is there any one person who sat at that big table and, hey, why don't we do this?
I don't know exactly how. I remember seeing, that Scotland on social media, Scotland had done this, and I remember saying it to somebody. And others were going, yeah, I've seen that, so I don't know if it was one of those that just collectively people had seen it. But I think that sort of was the impetus that is, and it's turned out well. I mean, people, the creativity I still marvel at it because I don't feel like I have that creativity bone that, can come up with, fun puns or, topical names. But there are lots of folks out there that are good at it, and maybe they're the same people that name all these craft beers, I guess.
There you go. Maybe they're having craft beers while they're thinking about it.
Yeah. Help the creativity process.
Okay, so when does this all start, and how will it work again?
They don't have a set date yet, but I think we're looking at, probably in the next week or so, you'll see an announcement coming up. I know they were trying to get some final details squared away, just to make sure the process runs smoothly. But, I'd say watching the news here probably in the next week or so for the announcement. And that's where the nominations are open. So you can go to the MnDOT website. You can submit, the name you want to be considered. It's typically they have a winter theme, that's, but I mean.
There's snowplows for crying out loud.
Right. Yeah. It's got it's typically should have a winter theme. It's great if it's got that Minnesota connection. There was that one year Betty Whiteout, and because she was born in Minnesota, the whole bit and, different things like that. So sometimes, and we saw that with like Taylor Swift, where it's sort of right on that topical, it's the discussion of the year or the month. And sometimes people ride that, you might see, a sports person's name mixed in there. I think Joe Mauer was Joe Plower or something like that. And there's that period there where I think it's typically like, a week and a half, 2 weeks, somewhere in there to submit names. And then we compile all of them and it's kind of fanned out. And there's just a whole group of people at MnDOT that kind of help sort through what they see, seems doable, in good taste, all those filters that you try to.
Yeah, you don't want one slipping by that had a hidden meaning and you didn't realize it until too late.
Yes, you want the chief counsel's office
Bring
to give
in
them
some
a look
young
too,
people who know the current slang.
Yes, right, exactly. So it's, you get a variety of audiences. Some, the list will sometimes make its way down to my group down here too as well. We're not the final arbiters, but we're just, say, hey, here's the ones that jumped out at us that we thought were good. And they check it all. And then I think in January, somewhere in there, they'll come out with, it's about a list of 50 or so, 35, 50 somewhere. I can't remember exactly what we end up. But a good compliment, for people. Then they vote, and then you can pick up to 8 because MnDOT has 8 districts. So each district gets a named snowplow, at the end of this. And, then they go from there, the top 8, and then they announce it probably in that early February time, probably around Super Bowl, kind of in that range when the Super Bowl is, somewhere in there. And then they got to print up the stickers and get them out and get the plow washed and find a time when it's not out working and get it in and get that thing affixed and off we'll go. So, and this will be the 5th year.
And last year, I remember, I cannot remember which national outlet did it, but it could have been the Today Show. I can't remember. You probably do. But the angle they took on the story was, what do those Minnesotans do when they're so bored in the dark of winter? They name their snowplows.
It does. It fits us well. It's kind of a fun little parlor game, for a bit. And then it's over, but the fun thing is then, those snowplows, they're working snowplows. So they're out in the fleet. You'll see ours, if you go to the light parade in downtown Rochester, tomorrow, Saturday, you'll see Snowy One Kenobi, which is one of ours.
You guys decked it out in lights and everything?
We just figure it's got enough lights as it is.
Oh.
So, it's, there was some discussion, but, then it's like a lot of extra work, and it's a state vehicle, but it's got a lot of lights on its own. So we think it'll stand well.
And there's always the chance that it might be called into service. And then if you have all the Christmas lights on it, that's going to be a problem. Yeah,
and talking with Brad Trahan, we kind of gave him those caveats. Like we'd love to, but if duty calls, we need to go, and he gets that. Same with law enforcement or any other public service folks that are out to serve and protect. So,
and they're getting lucky with the weather, aren't they? I mean, it's supposed to be mild for this parade.
Yes.
So hopefully they'll have a great crowd downtown for that.
I think so. I think it's fun. It's a new thing. It's kind of exciting. I love winter parades. I've gone up to like the St. Paul Winter Carnival parades. When they used to have the Holodazzle in the Twin Cities. Any of those things are kind of fun. You dress for the weather and you go out and you have some fun. And we were just pleased to be invited to be part of this first parade in Rochester.
Okay, so if I am one of these creative people, and I'm not saying I am, but I know people who are.
You know people.
I'm always amazed at their creativity.
Yeah.
And mine gets selected. Is there any recognition for me, like a T-shirt, like I got to name a snowplow 2024?
Nothing officially from MnDOT. We've talked about that periodically, but I think that would add a whole nother element because you'd have to fill in a lot more information because it's anonymous. You just kind of send it in. But we've had a number of requests from people asking for certificates of authenticity that they were, and like, if I remember right, the Taylor Swift one, it was like 237 other people that also, so.
Oh, so there are duplicate people who come up with the same idea.
Almost always it's rare that there's a single entry that just knocks your socks off and is so unique that, so usually.
Scoop, there it is. Nobody else came up with that one.
Yes, there were
really?
multiples. Yeah.
That amazes me.
Yeah, different ones. It's kind of, I don't know, there's a subtle variation sometimes too that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, but we had talked about that. That would be kind of fun to give a certificate or get your picture taken by it but I think there's just too much rigmarole to make that work. But maybe someday if we continue.
There might be a lawsuit.
Right. It's, there's always the chance that somebody's disgruntled or their entry got lost or whatever.
Or it was so similar that they stole my idea. Okay.
Yeah.
We want to keep it fun. You're right.
Yeah. And it is fun.
All right, Mike. You have a wonderful Christmas season.
Yeah, you too.
And we'll talk to you next year, early next year, I'm sure.
Definitely. Safe travels.
Yes. Keep that in mind. Everybody, please. Make sure you get to spend the holidays with your loved ones and not in the hospital or worse because you were in a hurry.
Yep.
Okay, Mike.
Give the gift of time.
Very good. Thank you again. We'll talk to you in about a month.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Andy.
All right. Mike Dougherty with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. We know him as MnDOT Mike on Rochester Today. News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.